Welcome, for those who don't know me, I'm Anna. I remember when I first joined the Wynncraft community, more specifically when I first started class building, I was pelted by all these terms and jargon that Wynncrafters use, and I just had no idea what anything meant, and it was really super daunting. But now after about, it's been 2 years now, ever since I started Wynn. But yeah, after 2 years, I've come up with a list of jargon and terms that you'll probably see often, as well as what they mean, and hopefully this helps and makes it a bit less daunting for you. TCC, NOL, NOTG, TNA, Cura, LI, these are shortened versions of challenges. For example, NOTG, which you can see running in the background right now, is short for Nest of Grit Slangs. TNA would be short for Nameless Anomaly, NOL, Nexus of Light, etc. Obviously, Cura and Legendary Island aren't raids, but most of these abbreviations are just used in short for raids. Also, something you might see often, LR would be short for a loot run. Base damage is just the damage listed on the weapon. B-Scream, Upper Surf, and others, Bash Scream or B-Scream. These are normally going to be a shortened version of a playstyle or like a spell cycle. You'll see later, but my idol right now, this is a B-Scream idol build. But yeah, Kata, Hana, Abso, Acro, Lightbender, LB, Rift, B-Monk, Fallen Monk, Palamonk, R-Bender, etc. These are going to be abbreviated versions of a mythic or like a mix of archetypes. For example, Hana is short for Hanafubuki, B-Monk is short for Battle Monk. These can also be a mix. For example, R-Bender refers to a mix of Riftwalker and Lightbender, or commonly referred to as Riftbender. Same with like Fallen Monk or Paladin Monk, that'd be a mix of Fallen, Paladin, and Battle Monk respectively. C-Stack is very interesting. C-Stack refers to a melee build that is pretty much just exclusive to Panic Zealot, from what I know. But basically, you use armor with large amounts of raw melee and a reasonable amount of negative tier, and then you use like other gear with plus attack speed tier to kind of like cancel, quote unquote, cancel out that, so you achieve like really high attack speeds with really great amounts of melee damage. EHP stands for your effective HP. This is basically your HP and your kind of quote-unquote survivability while taking into account stuff like your defense stat and your agility stat. ETWFA and other letter combinations, these are going to be combinations of like elements that are going to be used in either like a build. It's usually going to be used in some context where you can tell, but basically ETWA, Earth, Thunder, Water, Fire, Air. It's just gonna list like the amount of, or like which elements are used in a build. Glass cannons are just builds with high damage, low defenses, as the name suggests. Glassy, you'll probably die in like one hit, but you do a lot of damage most of the time. The most common of these that you'll see are going to be ETW builds, or Earth, Thunder, Water builds. The most famous was before 2.1 happened. The most famous before then was 2.1 Trickabat, which would normally be Kata, ECW. It's really crazy. HPR is short for health regen. So gear, you'll normally have gear that will regen health for you passively over time. This, you'll see this as an ID on items. Win Builder also conveniently has a section that shows your HPR. HM is short for heavy melee, basically any build that only stacks. Normally it's raw main attack damage, but sometimes also percent in the case of Nycthambrian, I don't know how to pronounce that. But yeah, you'll end up with massive amounts of melee attack damage, but you'll have a super duper slow attack speed. The most common of these are going to be Twain Stack Archer, or basically heavy melee sharpshooter archer that uses Twain's Arc for even more heavy melee damage. Or you'll also see Shade Stepper HM Assassin, which takes advantage of, like Sausagen and Quake, which is scaled off of main attack damage for like massive amounts of burst damage. Hybrids, I'm not going to get into them, but basically hybrids, any build that has both substantial damage from main attack and spell damage. I don't see them that often anymore, but they're still out there. Yeah, there's a list. I'm putting it up. I'm too lazy to describe them all. JH is short for jump height. LE and STX. LE is short for liquid emeralds, and STX is short for a stack of liquid emeralds, so 64. LS is short for lifesteal. Melee means attacking with your weapon instead of, spellcasting. MR is short for mana regen, and MS is short for mana steal. You won't see PS used that often anymore. I haven't really seen it being used recently, but basically PS stands for powder special. This is the ability that you get when you put 2 tier 4 plus powders of the same element on the same piece of armor or a weapon. Basically, this is going to be stuff like Rage, Concentration, Quake, etc. You can see, well, you can't really see right now, but on my Singularity I've placed 2 tier 4 earth powders first, along with 13 others that are pretty much mandatory. I didn't put T6s because I'm broke. But basically, Quake is going to be my powder special. On armor, this is going to be things like Concentration, Dodge, Rage, Courage. Sorry, not Courage. Yeah, just that. My brain's died, but yeah. Rainbow. I have a rainbow build with Singularity. Rainbow refers to weapons dealing damage of each type. For example, you can see my Singularity is doing that. Gear with requirements in all stats, as well as builds that use them. Raw is a solid value instead of a percent. For example, Singularity has both a raw and a percent stat for spell damage. You can also see how with Idle, it has only raw spell damage. And Rex is short for requirements. SD is short for spell damage. SP is short for skill points. Spell, each class has 4 spells. With context, they can either mean the spells themselves or like builds focused on using spells. Spell spam, it's, relatively self-intuitive. Builds focused on spamming spells as fast as possible. These will normally focus on spell cost reduction, as well as mana regen, and of course, spell damage, etc. Spell steal builds are normally spell spam, not always, but normally spell spam builds that focus on using mana steal instead of mana regen for mana sustain. Spell costs increase by 5 each time you cast a spell consecutively 3 times or more. So a spell cycle is an order in which you cast spells in order for this cost to not affect as much. For example, Meteor, Ice Snake, or others like how Acrobat cycles Spin Attack and Dash. This way it resets the mana increase, and this way your mana won't run out. Sustain. Sustain usually refers to how well a spell cycle can sustain with the amount of mana regen, or like how well it compares to the amount of mana regen, but basically it refers to some kind of recovery. Normally this will be mana recovery in comparison to your spell cycle and your spell costs, etc. But sustain can also be, for example, health regen sustain or something like that. T-stack or tier stack is where you take a super slow attack speed weapon with high damage, like Epic. 99% of the time you're going to see it's Epic. But basically, you will take this weapon and use gear with attacks plus attack speed tier IDs to ramp this up to a super high attack speed weapon. And then, yeah, basically you just get super high attack speed, high melee damage, spam right click, Teardrop refers to when you intentionally use gear with minus tier attack speed to drop your attack speed tier, hence the name, Teardrop, relatively intuitive. The only time I think you'll ever really see this is with spell steal builds, where they will lower their attack speed so you can get the full advantage or the full value of your steals. And with Lightbender, where if you use a teardropping piece of gear like Agave, like the ring, it'll make managing your orbs a bit easier. Last but certainly not least, WS is short for walk speed. Anyways, that was a really long list. These are all the terms and words that I feel are still relevant today. Psyduck actually made a whole spreadsheet, table, list thingy with a lot more terms and words, but I feel like some of them might be a bit outdated, or simply people just don't use that term anymore. But I'll still leave that in the description if you want to. But yeah, that's all from me. Hopefully I helped. And as always, thank you so much for watching.